Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's customer-exclusive webinar, Tailoring Your Experience with Core. My name is Donna Long, and I will be your host during today's webinar, presented by Alan Dawes. We're excited to explore the not-so-well-known features of Core. Alan serves as a customer support specialist at Vitech. Since joining the workforce, he has worked in many different customer-oriented industries. His experience in the sport world has given him a uniquely customer-centric approach to all aspects of his career. He has training in music video production and behavioral analytics, which brings a unique skill set and outlook to the Vitech team. While at Vitech, Alan has produced many resources. You may have heard his voice in the recently released screencast in the Skill Building Collection for Genesis. Before Alan gets started, I have a few housekeeping items. We will be answering questions today at the end of the presentation. Please send your questions in as soon as you think of them through the question tab on the webinar control panel. Alan will answer as many questions as he can today, but if we do not get to your question, we will reach out to you after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded. If you experience connection problems during the live presentation, you will be able to access the recording in the My Support area of the Vitech website. If you have any questions regarding the recording, please contact us by emailing support@vitechcorp.com or just email me. At the conclusion of this webinar, a survey will open on your screen. Please take a moment to give us feedback on today's presentation or on what topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Alan. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining us as well, like Donna said. I'm excited to talk to you guys about, tailoring your experience with Core. And what I'm excited about this for is it allows a lot of customization for you and different users to edit information in a way that best suits you or the user. It enables you to work your way, not having to adhere to others when going through your workflow, and also helps to ease some of the pain points facing many engineers, such as finding unallocated components or unverified requirements, things like that. So as part of this webinar, we're going to go through a few different topics. You can see them listed on your screen here. We'll start with icon templates, go into the project preferences, talk about filters, sort blocks, the user preferences. We'll touch on the Toolbar Editor, and then go into the Notifications Center. Most of this webinar is going to be spent in the tool, so there's not going to be a lot of PowerPoint slides or anything like that. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and switch over to Core and we'll start jumping into the icon templates. So the icon templates are basically a way for you to display specific information in icons on diagrams. So I'll go ahead and open a spider diagram here. Use the physical definition, basically saying this geospatial library is built from these two components. But you'll notice that on this diagram, each of these icons has just the name of the element in there. So I'll click on this and you'll notice up here at the top in this little drop down that I'm circling here, it just says name. This is where you set the icon template to show specific information in these icons when you have one selected. So if I were to go in here and we'll go name description. You'll notice that once I expand this out here, you can see the description of that element coming in. And these are great ways. You can do your own. You can use the ones that we have available. You'll notice there are a number of different ones available in this drop down here. But you can also, and let me go ahead and shift this back over to what it was. You can also select multiple of them and do them both at the same time, or 3 at the same time if you were to select all 3 of them. But I did that by simply holding Shift and clicking on each of them. It selects both of the nodes here, the icons, and then I'll go ahead and switch it back over to there, and you'll see both of these now have the description in there. Like I said, it's a great way for you to put whatever information you want to show on these diagrams out there for whoever you might be presenting this diagram to, or giving it to, anybody you might be communicating with. So one thing to note is that different diagrams in Core do default to different icon templates. So the one that I opened here, for example, defaults to just the name. other diagrams are going to default to different things. And you can change what the diagram defaults to through the project preferences. We'll go over that after we finish talking about icon templates here, but just know that you can change that default as well. Another beautiful thing about icon templates is that you can create your own to display your own specific data. So if I come over here, you'll notice down here in the bottom left that I'm circling here, I've got the utilities option expanded, and there's an option in here called icon templates. When I click on that, you'll notice everything on my screen changes. You've got the list of the same icon templates down here in the pane here in the middle that you did in that drop down on your diagram. And so you can click through them and see how they're kind of set up. One important note to make note of on your side is that a lot of the templates that we have released with Core are marked as essential. You'll notice up here this checkbox is there and it's grayed out. The essential icon templates are not editable. You can't delete them. You can't do anything to them. They're necessary to Core, but you can use them as a starting point for developing your own. And you can do that by either simply looking at them and seeing what they have, or you can even just right click and duplicate your icon template here. That'll basically duplicate it, make it the exact same, but then you can go in and edit the new one from there. So to create a new icon template, if you'll notice how I right click in the background here, you've got new icon template. You can click on that to create a new one. The other option when you have the icon template selected down here is to go to Utilities, New Icon Template. Something important to mention is you will notice this other option down here called Multi-Object Icon Template. And they're a little bit different. The regular icon template is used to represent single objects, such as an element or a class on a diagram, whereas a multi-object icon template is used to represent a collection of objects on a diagram. The multi-object icon templates are used more infrequently than the regular icon templates, but are typically used in representing connecting items, interfaces, or links on n-squared diagrams. So I'll go ahead and just stick with the regular icon template here. Click this to create a new one. You'll notice it comes up with the name here. I'll just name mine New Template for brevity's sake. And then we'll go ahead and start adding information here. You'll notice up at the top, you've got the name of your icon template. With it selected, you can just type whatever you want to in here to change the name of it. To add, change, or remove anything, you'll notice these commands over here on the right. So I'll go ahead and click add, and you'll notice a new dialog comes up. This is where you select what's going in your icon template for this particular entry. You have a number of different options up here for elements, different attributes, parameters, relationships, etc. You notice down here you've got an alignment for them and different label text. What I do want to touch on right here a little bit more is the size. In here, you've got the minimum number of lines. And what this determines is how many lines in the icon this entry is going to take up. So if I were to select it like this, I'll click Element, leave it as 1, and I'll leave this extra space here blank. That way, it's only going to take up one line in that icon template up at the top. So I'll go ahead and click OK and add that. And then what we'll do is we'll add another entry in here, and this is going to be a separator. What separators are basically lines drawn across the icon to separate different fields of information, if you will. There are a number of different options down here for how you want your separator to appear, but I'm just going to stick with the basic solid line and insert that. I will also go ahead and add something in here, and we will just go ahead and add, yeah, let's do the number after that. I like that, the attribute number here. And I'm going to fill the extra space with this. So what this is going to do is basically make this entry take up as much free space as possible that is left over in the icon. Whereas the element name that we added before is only going to be one line. This is going to take up as many lines as it can. So I'll hit OK. We'll go back to the same diagram that we were on before. And then you'll notice in here in the drop down after I select this icon that I have new template available. And if I click that, you'll notice now you've got the name up here. It's only taking up one line followed by the separator, which is that solid line going across. And then down here you have the number. That number is taking up as much space as possible, but with the way I have my text set through my preferences, the text remains that size, but it basically kind of word wraps it, if you will, in a way that like Excel does. All right, and I believe that about does it for icon templates. So what we'll do from here is we'll move into the project preferences. The project preferences are accessed by clicking on project up from the top menu, and then you go to project preferences. And then you'll get this dialog box that comes up. I'll just expand it a little bit. Most of the options available in these project preferences are going to be defaults for your diagrams. So I'll select Spider because that's what we were working with. And you'll notice that here you've got show frame, use local icon settings, and the different icon settings specific to your diagram that you're going to be working with. And you'll notice here that I can change the icon template. And I'll go ahead and change this to number name just to set it. And that will default to the first time you open a spider diagram, this icon template will be used for those icons. Now, an important note to make about these project preferences is that if you've already changed something on a diagram, so for example, I went in and changed the icon template for a couple nodes on that spider diagram, these changes won't overwrite those. So if you've already made changes, these changes here will not have any effect on the changes you've already made. However, if you, for example, haven't made a change to one of those icons, like I left the top right one alone, this would then apply to it when I opened the diagram. Another important note about these project preferences is that they can only be changed by an administrative user. All users can log in and look at these project preferences, but since they affect the project overall as a whole for every user logging in, only administrators can change it. You'll also notice up here at the top, you've got Core Sim, and this provides a couple of options for your simulation. You can set the duration in here, and you can also set the number of iterations that default in your simulator. So what I'll do is, now that I've changed this icon template here for the default, go ahead and hit OK, and I want to open that diagram again. You'll notice up here at the top right now, I'll expand this just to make it a little bit bigger, but now I have the number up here, followed by a separator, and then the name. And you'll see when I select it that the number and name is up here in the icon template selection drop down. And that's because we changed it. We had not actually touched it on this diagram. We changed it in the project preferences. And since no changes had been made to this icon, it picks up the default from there. And I believe that's about everything as far as project preferences, because I mean, they basically go for, project-wide settings, default diagrams, and the little bit that you can do with your Core Sim, but again, only administrative users can change those. So let's go ahead and get out of this diagram here. And what we'll go into now is we'll go into filters. And since we're going into filters, I'm just going to switch over to the requirements class, just because there's more data here to work with. You can see a little bit more in action. And what filters are basically a way to limit your field of view within a class. They can help to identify model incompleteness, work that needs to be done, or to simply view something that you want or need to see. Something really great about these filters too is that they can apply to table definitions for your CSV, Word, and DOORS exports. So you can subset a data. So if you wanted to bring your requirements out through an export, you can subset that by applying a filter. And we won't dive into that too far, but you just know you can do it. So from here, to apply a filter, you'll simply go to the top of your elements pane right here, this drop down. This is where you apply a filter. We have a number of different filters, as you can see, available for default use, what you may need them for. So I'll just go ahead and click on functional requirements. And what this does is not only changes the background of this pane to green to let you know that you have a filter applied, but it will filter out all of these different elements, these requirements in this case, with the type of functional. So it's showing all of the ones in my list that are functional requirements. You can also create and edit filters. That can be done one of two ways. You can either right click in the back of the pane here and click Edit Filter, or you can go to Data and click Edit Filter from there. They both get you to the same place, so it's ultimately whatever you're more comfortable with. I typically go with the right click. That's just because that's what I like doing. But once you do that, you'll get this filter dialog box that comes up right here. At the top left, you've got a drop down that has all of the filters that we provide with Core. So for example, those functional requirements that I selected, you'll notice that it fills this band down here once I select it up at the top left. These bands basically are different entries in your filter. So if I were to select another one, let's go unaddressed requirements. You'll notice that this particular filter has 3 different bands here. And this brings me to talk about the different selections that are available in this dialog. So the different bands are the different entries, as I said. Down here, you've got the different options of and as well as or. What this selection means is when you have and selected, it means that all of these different bands must be true for this element to make it through the filter. So it has to have empty targets in the refined by, empty targets in the basis of, and empty targets in the specifies relationships to make it through this filter. If I were to select the or option here, any one of these bands or any one of these quote unquote tests that is achieved or true would make it through that filter. So I mean, it could be if it has an empty target in refined by but has targets of basis of and specifies, then it would still make it through the filter because it's any one of these things when you have that selected. Over here on the right, you've got this not option on each of the bands. What that does is inverses the band that you have there. So if I've got targets refined by is empty and then click not here, it'll basically give me targets refined by is not empty. So it inverses your selection there. And then the delete option here is just to get rid of that particular band. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and get rid of those 3 that we have there so we can kind of make our own. But before I do define my own filter, I want to just touch on the advanced filter option because we're working with quick filters here. The advanced filter option goes into scripting. Now, it is a little bit more in depth. We're not going to go into it very much here because it does require scripting knowledge. But if that's something you're interested in, we have a great class available. Give our support team a shout or something like that, and we'll get you in touch with the right people so you can get into one of those classes and learn scripting a little bit more so that you could go in and define these advanced filters. But I'll go back to the quick filter here and we'll just define something as, okay, attribute. Something beautiful about this as well is that you can click in one of these boxes and type. So if you know what you're looking for, I can type O and I want my attribute of origin. So you can just click in there, type your O button, and then it'll bring up the first entry as an O option there. Then I'll go equals and we'll go derived. So what I'm going to do now is click this save option here and then name it the derived elements. and click OK. Now, if you don't save that, you can hit OK and it'll give you a little dialog box that says you haven't saved your filter, but asks you if you want to apply it anyway. If you accept it during that little dialog that comes up, it'll apply the filter to the view you have, but it's not going to save that filter for future use. It would just be kind of a one-time filter. If you want to save it, just go ahead, click the save button, name it something different so you're not saving it as, you know, something that's already in here, and then click OK, and you'll have that filter saved for future use. You'll notice my pane after I hit OK has applied my filter up here at the top, and the pane is green, indicating that the filter has been applied. But there's no element showing because I don't have any derived requirements as of right now. But just to kind of show you that it does work, is I'll just go in here and we'll change this origin to derived just for giggles, and then switch it over to the derived elements, and you can see that it comes through here. So it's the only one in there that is derived. Then I'll just change it back to where it was before, and it disappears because it's no longer a derived requirement. So we'll go back there. And I believe that touches on everything that goes into filters, which will segue pretty well into our sort blocks. And what sort blocks are a method of sorting your elements in a given view. So you'll notice down here at the bottom that you have this drop down next to where it says sort. And this is sorting the data in this particular view based on that sort block. So right now it's set to numeric. We can also do numeric by class. You'll notice there are a number of different sort blocks, or we could just do alphabetic, and it pops it over, and you notice now these are all in alphabetical order instead of numeric order based on the number scheme that we've defined for them. Sort blocks are edited in a very similar way that icon templates are. So over here under the utilities option, you can click on sort blocks, and it'll take you into a point where you can see the list of the different sort blocks that we have included, edit, create your own, delete them if you want to. Just kind of like our icon templates, you'll notice that some of these are marked as essential up here, meaning you can't edit or delete them. But also, just like icon templates, you can use them as starting blocks for your own sorts. So, you know, you can duplicate this sort block here. It'll be the same as what you have, and then you can edit it from there if you like that. To create a new one for your own sort blocks, you can either right click and go new sort block, or you can go under utilities, new, and then sort block when you have that selected. And again, these take you to the same area. They perform the exact same command, so it's just ultimately whatever you're most comfortable with. And I'll just name mine new sort. We'll click that. Now, it always starts with the element name in here. So you'll notice that it's got the element name in these two different panes here that I just selected. Starting at the top, you've got the name of your sort block, so you can change that up here to whatever you would like. You've got this ascending and descending option, which basically means it'll assort it in ascending order or descending order, depending on what you want. These two different blocks down here obviously mean different things. The sort criteria is how it's actually going to sort the data. So right now it's element name, it would sort it only by the name, so alphabetic as we had it. The representation down here is going to determine how the element is shown once you apply your filter, or sort block, excuse me. So let's go ahead and add something in here. I'll add a new option, and we'll just go class. So it's going to first sort it by name, and then it's going to sort it by the class here. What we'll do after that is we'll add something into our representation to get it to show a little bit more information than just the name. So if I click add here, I'll go in to click text and just add a space. And the reason that I do that is so that when it is showing this information, the different points are not jammed up against each other. There's actually a space separating them. So it just doesn't look like one big jumbled mess of text that you've got there. Then what I'll do after that is I'll go ahead and add the class. And you'll notice in here you've got a number of different options. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible for the webinar's sake, but I mean, you can go into attribute value and add a number of different attributes. As you can see here, you can have it display custom text, stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and click class. So now what we've got is sorting it by the element name and then the class. And then we'll have it show the element name followed by a space, and then it'll show the class afterwards. So if I go into my requirements and go up here to, or down here rather, to the sort blocks, find my one called new sort, you'll see now it is in alphabetical order based on the name, because it sorted it by the name first. And then it would sort it by class. Now, we're only in the requirements class here, so you'll notice at the end of it, at each entry, it's got requirement based on the representation that I had selected in the sort block. But if you were to be working in a package or something like that where you had multiple elements from different classes, this particular type of filter could be useful. That way you would have all of your elements in a specific class together, but in alphabetical order to help you sort through them and find the information that you want. Just as icon templates, these can be applied to, CSV exports, DOORS exports, and Word exports as well. And yeah, very, very useful for finding information and getting information out in a way that you would want it to come out of core. So with that said, we will go ahead and move into the user preferences. The user preferences are found under the Tools menu up at the top. And go down here and click on User Preferences. What makes these preferences different than the project preferences is they are specific to the username that is logged in. So if I go in here and make a change to something like the spider diagram to show the grid lines on the back of the diagram, only my user would see that. If Donna were to log in, for example, she would not see the same things that I see based on these user preferences. There's a lot of information that you can change here. Display definitions, just for one to call out, will display different definitions when you hover over different options in core. You can hide different diagrams from your tabs down at the bottom there. You've got some core sim options to automatically open the transcript. A number of different diagram options, as I mentioned before, like show grid lines, stuff like that. You can change the scale of it. And you can even go in here and do spelling. And what this allows you to do is define dictionaries to basically check the spelling through your model here. So you can create your own dictionaries and have specific words that may not be recognized otherwise, whatever you want to do. And then you've got these different options up here. So that's kind of the user preferences. They basically just allow you as a user to set the way you're viewing things and not have to adhere to somebody else and view things the way you want to without really adjusting your model at all. Something else to touch on, which isn't under these user preferences, but acts as a user preference, is the Toolbar Editor. So now that I'm out of the project preference or user preferences, excuse me, I'll go over here on the toolbar and you'll notice this little arrow that's pointing downwards at the end of my toolbar. If I click on that little arrow, there is the Toolbar Editor. When I open that, you'll see this dialog come up. And what this allows you to do is customize what commands, basically icons, you see across the different toolbars throughout core. So right now I'm adjusting what's in the Project Explorer, which is what you see in the background of my screen here. But if you wanted to, you could scroll through and adjust it for each different diagram. So when you have an FFPD open in a specific window, you can adjust that, or any different diagram, as well as basically any different view. I'm going to stick with the Project Explorer just because that's what's on screen here. So for example, let's say I don't want the document parser on there. I don't know why I wouldn't want it on there, but I don't use it very often. So I'm going to go ahead and just click and drag it over to the left, and it'll remove it from there once I hit the OK button and apply it. So if I go ahead and hit OK, you'll notice that up here, there's no longer a document parser icon. It's not there anymore. And that's because I've removed it from the toolbar. So if I go back into the Toolbar Editor, and we'll just go down here and we will find the document parser one more time. I'll just click and drag it, put it right back over there and hit OK. You'll notice that document parser icon has come back up. Something else I'd like to touch on in here is kind of the restore defaults and restore all buttons. The restore defaults will restore the toolbar to its default status based on the view you're looking at. So right now I have my Project Explorer selected. If I click on restore defaults, it will restore it to the default way that it looks. If I click restore all, it will restore all of the views to their default. So, I mean, this is very useful. If you have commands in Core that you don't want muddying up your toolbar up at the top, something you don't use very often, something you don't use at all, you can come in here and remove it. And the reason that I kind of mention this now, right after the user preferences, is this is user specific. So if I log in and make these changes to my toolbar, and then Donna were to come in and log into the same model, she would not see the same toolbar that I have established for myself. So it's a great way to make sure you're using what you want to use and not using anything you don't need or don't want to use, something along those lines. So I'll go ahead and get out of the Toolbar Editor, which will take us into our last topic, but not the least topic, is the Notification Center. And what the Notification Center is, let me expand this a little bit just to make it look a little more usable on my screen. The Notification Center allows users to track information that is changed by a different user. So for example, I can come in here, follow a class or an element, and anytime a change is made by a different user other than the one I'm logged in as, you will see that in here. I mean, obviously for the user that is following that item. So the way that you go about following an item is you can click on a different element if you want to, or you can, follow a folder or a package or a class, whatever you would like to. I'll just go ahead and follow the component class. And the way you do that is you right click on that element or the class, you go to manage, and then you click follow. Now, what that has set me up for is the particular user I'm logged in as now is following this component class here. So anytime a different user makes a change to anything in the component class, I'm going to get a notification about it as the user I am. And if I go back to the Notification Center here, you'll notice that over here, currently following folder component. That means that I'm following this. But if I wanted to, I could come in here and follow like a specific requirement. Boop, boop, boop. Switch it over, and you'll see now I'm following requirement certify customers. So you can follow them at the element level, just kind of reiterating that. The Notification Center will show the timestamp of the change made, who that change was made by, the class that change was made to, the element that the change was made to, and a description of the change. So to kind of see this in action, what I will do is I will log out of Core. I will log in as a different user. We'll open the same project in the same repository. I'll go in here and this change is being made for the webinar. So I'll just put that in there, click out to make sure it saves. And then the requirement, I believe I was following certify customers. I'll just make this, making another change. Click out to make sure it saves. Now you'll notice that this user doesn't get anything in here. There's nothing in the notification center about changes or anything like that. And that's because this user isn't following anything. So if I go ahead and log back out, I'll log in as my administrative user here. We'll open that project back up and go over to my notification center. You'll now see that there are 2 entries here. One for the change to the specific requirement that I made, showing that, okay, something was changed in the requirement class to the certify customers element, and I changed the attribute description. The one below it, you'll notice that the class was component, the element was workstation, and I changed the purpose attribute there. So you can, this is very, very useful. I mean, I like doing this as an administrative user. That way, if you need to know, or a project manager, something like that, if you need to know what is changing in a specific class or to specific elements, you can go in here and get a notification whenever something changes to it. You can also unfollow items by doing the same thing that you did to follow them. Right click, go manage, and stop following. You can also unfollow items from the notification center itself by simply selecting it, right clicking, and going stop following. And then you can also, you know, come in here. There's a couple different options when you right click in the notification center to clear the selected messages here, clear all messages, and you can even open elements off of this page. So if I wanted to see, okay, what changed on this particular description? Let me open the property sheet for that. And oh, okay, here's what was made. That was the change. I can see it there. And then if everything's fine, I can get rid of it. If it's not, then I can, you know, take it up with whoever I need to take it up with, or look at the model rearranging and see what I might need to do. So with that said, I mean, that covers the notification center. I believe we're ready to move into questions now, Donna, as that kind of covers everything that we have available in Core right now. Or not available, but everything that we're talking about in this webinar.
Thank you, Alan. We have received a few questions, thanks to our participants. I do encourage you to join the discussion right now and submit your question using the webinar control panel. Okay, one of the first questions is, you mentioned that sort blocks and filters can be used in exports. How would you do this and why?
So why you would do this would be to limit the scope of your export. So let's say you wanted to bring out specific requirements, for example, and I created a filter or a sort block that is specific to my requirements. So for example, my derived requirements, I went in here and applied it. We don't have any right now, but just for the sake of this question, we'll go to export. And you'll notice here you've got doors, CSV, and Word. I'll just select CSV. We'll go to the requirement class because that's what we're talking about here. And I'll apply my table definition. We're not going to go into table definitions. There's a lot more to this than we really have time for today. But you'll notice up here at the right that you've got filters and sort blocks. So if I were to apply my filter of derived elements to this table definition and then actually go through and export this, it would export everything, all the requirements, and then based on that filter that I have set up here. So it would bring out all of the requirements with that origin of derived. So that's how you do that. And you'll notice above it that you also have sort blocks, so you can actually bring it out sorted based on what you want to. So if I wanted to apply my new sort block to it as well as my derived filter, I can do that and then go through and export it. I'm not going to finish the export here just for you know, webinar sake, but that's exactly how you would do that.
Okay. Question from Jeff. If I have created a filter in one project, will it be available for other projects in the same repository?
No, it won't. These the filters are project specific. They're not repository specific. So in order to get a filter over to another project, what you would have to do is go to File, Export, Core Data File. And what you would do in here is you would select this export option and go to Advanced Options. and then you could just select your filter definitions or your icon templates or your sort definitions, whatever you want to export. And then you export that as an XML file. And when you want it into your other project, you would go to File, Import, Core Data File, select that data file that you have exported, and then import it into whichever project you would like it to be a part of.
Okay. Okay, and one of the last questions, unless somebody wants to put one in, is from Bob. Do I have to be an administrator to follow elements, folders, or classes in the notification center?
No, you do not. Any user can follow for the notification center. I just mentioned, administrators and project managers as kind of a use case, if you will. But no, anybody can follow that. Any user can follow those.
Okay, and I did have one clarification. When you were talking about the project preferences and who could change that, there are two types of users. There's the system administrator, which is a type of user for core, and that's the checkbox on the user. And there are project administrators, those who have administrative rights on a project. The people who have the administrative right on the projects are the ones that can make the project preference changes. So just wanted to clarify that. There was one question. So thanks, Alan. That wraps up the Q&A for today's presentation. If you have any other questions or comments for Alan, don't hesitate to shoot him an email. You can see his email address on the screen right now, or you can send a message to me and I'll get it over to him. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Please keep an eye on your inbox for more webinar invitations over the next few weeks. We keep our webinar calendars up to date on our website, so please check there for upcoming systems engineering webinars and also customer exclusive webinars. Remember, at the conclusion of this webinar, a survey will open on your screen. Please do take a moment to give us feedback on today's presentation or on what topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars. That's all for today. Once again, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.